Welcome to Sea Bass Explores. Today, our adventure starts in Baguio City, where we travel through winding mountain roads on a motorbike, and then end up at Mount Ulap, where we climb to the summit and take in a spectacular view. Baguio sits high in the Cordillera region, part of the central mountain range of northern Luzon, at over 1,500 meters above sea level. It's among the coldest inhabited places in the Philippines, with air crisp enough to feel like another world. Nights can drop to around 15 degrees, while the days hover comfortably in the mid-20s. I'd been staying at a small Airbnb in town and decided to rent a scooter to explore the surrounding mountains. Baguio's story is deeply tied to the land. Rich in gold, pine forests, and a temperate climate that drew settlers, traders, and miners from all over. Over time, it became a meeting place of cultures. The Iloilo people, the American builders, and the generations of Filipinos who now call this place home. Long before the city was built, the Iloilo and the Cancanay tribes lived in harmony with these mountains, tending their fields and forests. They called this place Cafaguay, a wide clearing of grassland surrounded by pine and mist. When the Americans arrived in the early 1900s, they saw something different. A mountain refuge, a place to escape the heat of the lowlands. They brought their architecture, their roads, Yet beneath all the new names and concrete, the spirit of the Cordilleras still lingers. In the smell of pine needles after rain, in the laughter of children selling strawberries by the roadside, and in the quiet resilience of the people who have made these slopes their homes for generations. There's a sense here the mountains decide who stays. The fog rolls in, the temperature drops, and life slows down to match the rhythm of the hills. It's a place where nature and humanity coexist. Not always easy, but with the kind of mutual respect born from endurance. You'll notice I pass quite a few vehicles on the road, not because I'm in a rush to get somewhere, but because riding behind old trucks and jeepneys can be rough. Many of them run on older diesel engines, and the exhaust is thick enough to choke you if you follow too close. Like in many parts of the world, the growing need for transportation is leaving its mark on local microclimates. I see people walking with masks or scarves around their faces as trucks struggle up the hills. After a day of riding in the city, I wiped my face and found a black film staining my towel. I don't say this to criticize, only to observe, as an outsider looking in on a world adapting in its own way. The ride to the base of Mount Ulap takes about 45 minutes by scooter, depending on your speed and the condition of the road. Traffic thins as you leave the city, replaced by cool winds and the sounds of mountain life. The road winds through green ridges and steep valleys, each turn revealing another layer of the Cordilleras. Terraces, pine trees, and clusters of homes built right into the hillsides. What struck me the most were the views. So many modest homes perched on cliff sides with world-class scenery just outside their doors. People here live simply, often with only what they need. Yet, there's something about the way they live that feels grounded, rooted to the land, to the air, and to each other. As I leave the city behind, the rush to get somewhere slowly fades away. Out here, people aren't in a hurry. They're already where they're meant to be. Along the way, I stop for food. A small store clings to the edge of a hill, its back porch opening onto a deep valley shaded by the clouds. 3 women greet me, curious, kind, and quietly amused by the stranger on a scooter. Between them, they speak enough English to understand I'm looking for coffee and something to eat. They don't have much, just a cup of instant coffee and a bowl of rice with simple soup. But it isn't about what's on the table. They share their own breakfast with me, not as a business, but as an act of kindness, a small gesture that feels like home in a place far from my own. So I say thank you to those lovely ladies. Your hospitality was appreciated and filled me with enough fuel to get to the summit of Mount Ulap. Still, I remember their faces, the warmth of their smiles, the quiet generosity of people who have little but share much. Moments like that remind me that the most human connections often happen far from the noise of modern life. If you've made it this far in the video, I just want to say thank you so much. It means a lot. And if you don't mind, would you please consider liking and subscribing for more content like this? I'm going to be uploading a lot more travel adventures. This is actually my first video, so the quality is only going to go up from here. Now, if you're planning any sort of motorbike trip or any sort of travels into the Philippines, I've got to say it's 100% worth it. Especially this part of the Philippines in Luzon. These mountains are quite cool and temperate in climate, and it makes for an easy transition if you're coming from a more cool climate. Like if your home country is somewhere in North America or Northern Europe and you're used to a little bit more of a moderate climate, this is a great way to start your trip in the Philippines and a good way to sort of acclimate to the temperature, because after this I travel more into the beach areas, into some of the hotter islands, and you definitely notice the heat there a lot. Riding through the mountains down these winding roads is absolutely one of the most enjoyable parts of my trip, and I have to say the temperature is part of that. Now, if you're just starting out motorbiking, I would highly recommend you rent one of these automatic scooters. They may look a little bit silly, especially if you're coming from North America or somewhere outside where you're used to seeing people riding motorbikes like I was. But man, the ease of transportation and the additional space and comfort you get from riding one of these scooters really makes it the better choice. They're often less expensive to rent. They're just as capable as the motorbikes. They're clutchless, meaning it's got an automatic transmission, which makes it much easier to drive. You're not downshifting gears. All you have to do is turn your hand and you go. It's an absolutely phenomenal machine, and there's a reason why the vast majority of people who live in the Philippines choose to drive one of these automatic scooters or motorbikes, as they call them, rather than a clutched motorbike, because the roads here are so windy and so full of challenges that you're going to be stopping and starting, slowing down and speeding up all of the time. And having the automatic transition makes that much more easy. You're not going to look quite as cool, but you're also not going to look like an idiot. You're going to look like a local, and you're going to look like you know what you're doing if you rent one of these. So if you're interested in hearing where I ended up renting this from, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll try and get back to you and answer any questions you might have. But that's just my 2 bits. Take it or leave it, and do yourself a favor when you're visiting the Philippines. One of the downsides of doing long distance motorbike touring is the need for space and the need to be able to transport some of your possessions and belongings with you. For me, I wanted to be able to bring my computer and some camera equipment and quite a few different odds and ends. So space was a bit of an issue. What I decided to do, and this isn't necessarily the best way of doing it, is to buy a waterproof backpack, kind of a heavy duty one. And then I basically just strapped it onto the back of my scooter. And that way all of my electronics were protected. It felt fairly safe. I mean, most of the time, if I had my gear with me, I was heading from one accommodation to the next. So I wasn't leaving it unattended for any long periods of time. But I never had any issues, and I did park a few times to stop for food or for lunch, and a lot of the places you stop, you're going to have a view of your bike, or there's going to be some sort of video surveillance from the business, and it felt very safe to do that. the base of the mountain, locals greet me with warm curiosity. They ask what my plan is, and I tell them I want to climb Mount Ulap today, to reach the summit before dark and ride back through the hills before nightfall. Within minutes, they found a guide, a high school student, quiet but confident, who spends his weekends leading visitors to the top. They say he's one of the fastest. I smile, not realizing yet how true that would be. Only wearing a pair of Crocs, it was still a challenge to keep up with him. It's only after we've began that I discover I'm climbing Mount Ulap from the backside. Most tours start early in the morning and follow the gentler route, finishing where I've just begun. But I've never been one for convention, and somehow it feels right to take the steeper, less traveled way up. The trail begins with narrow stone steps and suspension bridges that sway above creeks below. We pass through small mountain farms where vegetables and fruit trees grow, providing sustenance for the families who live on these slopes. It feels like walking through a living botanical garden, a blend of wild and cultivated, every turn framed by trees, mist, and the steady rhythm of footsteps climbing higher into the clouds.